everyone, this is OCD Live. I'm Ali Grayman. We're going to be answering some questions about OCD. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, please subscribe. If you have a question that you would like me to answer on the next show, please leave it below any of the videos and let's get started. So first question is, why do I get weird feelings in my brain? It's usually in the front part of my brain. Again, don't get too worked up over it because that can start to become a new OCD thought. Chances are it's just because your brain is overworked with OCD. I would say just, again, no reaction. Is there a feeling? Is there not a feeling? I'm not reacting. I'm living parallel to that thought. The anxiety will stay there for a little bit, but I'm not reacting. Hi Ali, is it necessary to find a therapist for ERP or can we do it ourselves? You can definitely do it yourself. I mean, what I've learned through, 7, 8 years of talking to clients is the part that matters almost in the beginning, the sessions matter a lot because the person needs to become an expert in their disorder. But if your therapist is not making you an expert in OCD and explaining why things are happening, then it's not, you know what I mean? Like you need to find a specialist, not just a therapist. Because therapists can say, well, yeah, I treat OCD, but then in reality, believe me, in the years of me talking to clients, most of the time they don't know what they're talking about. Not all the time, but I would say 80% of them don't. So, when they say that, I would say if you're looking for a specialist, ask them, well, how many people have you helped? Am I the first one? I have, say, for example, you have false memory type of OCD, right? I have false memory type of OCD. How many people have you helped with that particular situation? Or am I the first one? Don't be afraid to ask those questions. You're paying money to them. You're expecting them to help you and not waste your time because with OCD recovery, time element is very important. If you're not getting better, chances are you're getting worse because you're doing reassurance, either self-reassurance or, asking others, checking, compulsions, all that stuff. So time is important. So if they are specialists, they need to say that to you, and if they're not, then you don't want them, trust me. Can we do it ourselves? So yeah, so that brings me to the next thing is you can do it yourself. It's just going to be a lot harder, and that's what I was kind of started to talk about in the beginning of this question is that the first few sessions, what I find with my clients anyway, that the first few sessions are very important for the person to understand the rhythm of OCD, how OCD works, becoming an expert. After that, what makes the program help the person move forward faster in their recovery is the constant support. So I have my clients, for example, on the chat text support, where they can always text me how they're feeling, and then we can, reassess if we should do a session or if we can just talk via text to make them get back on the right track. So if you're not doing it with anybody, you're doing it by yourself, yes, you can do it, but you have to be your own therapist then. So you have to be very vigilant and trying to pull yourself out when you are in that situation of panic, So, but, I've done it myself. I'm not the, most strong-willed person in the world, So I would say that, yeah, if you want to do it by yourself, you definitely can. You have to be even more focused on your recovery. If you're like somewhat focused, I don't know if I would recommend that, but you can see. Don't try to judge your progress day to day because day to day is too hard. Things can happen in terms of other stresses, which can sidetrack your OCD recovery and all of that. But week to week, you should be saying, yes, I feel better this week than I did last week. If you're not doing that, if you're saying I feel worse or I'm not sure, and then another week go by, oh, I'm still not sure, some days I feel worse, then that's not good. You have to either get a specialist or pick yourself up and start just powering through, There's nothing that stops you for not getting anybody else, you just going through and recovering. Just think of yourself like a tank going through a desert. And you're just, whatever, it comes along the way, too bad, you're mowing right through it, Do you know what I mean? That's the way to recovery. If you do this, then you don't need anybody else. But if you can't, then you probably need somebody. So it's hard to know. It's a lot of it depends on the person's personality, how ready they are for recovery, their lifestyle, their work. There's a lot of factors to it. But when you're kind of go underneath it all, really, just like everything else in life, it's just about willpower. If you're sick enough of the OCD, if you're sick of being in this position, you know you'll do it. And if you would like my help in helping you recover, then you can do that through youhaveocd.com, sign up, and we can get started. So next question is, tomorrow will be exactly 1 year after the most terrible OCD, religious OCD attack I had. I am happy to say that Ali's method really works. Oh, I'm glad to help you. Even though my OCD did not go away completely yet, it's about 80% gone. The rest 20% is what I am too afraid to deal with. Is that what I have to ignore next? Thanks, Ali. Sorry, sometimes like when I read it, it sounds kind of bad on audio. It's just because I'm reading the question for the first time. Yeah, the 20% at the end is usually the hardest thing that you kind of avoid doing the entire time recovering. So that's like you save it for last. But you do have the experience of getting rid of the other 80%. So I wouldn't say it will be too hard for you, because at the beginning is really the hardest, right? The end is just the end. So I would say just power through it like you powered through everything else. This last 20% is not different than the other 80. It just feels more severe for you because it just triggers you more. That's all that's happening. It's just same thing, not reacting. But I'm glad it's working for you though. So next question is it normal to feel depressed and exhausted when you finally manage to cut down the OCD thoughts? It's normal to feel depressed and exhausted throughout the whole time of recovery. That's just kind of how OCD goes. When your mind is overworked, you're stuck in this situation of having OCD. You will feel like that. I felt like that. It just, once you recover, it all goes away. So it's just kind of a part of the process. So next question is, I was wondering, I have been trying to overcome OCD for 2 years, but I keep allowing myself to fall back into reassurance. I've made a fresh go at it this week, or a week ago rather. But this time it seems harder. Is it common to have more difficulty recovering after stopping and restarting several times? Yes, because what's happening is every time you are falling into reassurance, you're kind of reiterating again and again to your mind that this situation is dangerous, valid, very scary. And your mind says, okay, it's scary. I gotta send you more anxiety with it. So you're just teaching it over and over that black is white and white is black. And that's why every time you have a go at it of, more of this teaching the wrong thing, it gets progressively harder. And that's why you just have to say, you know what? Enough is enough. From this moment on, I'm not doing any more reassurance, because it just, why are you setting yourself back, right? Why are you doing it to suffer more, It's with OCD, by doing reassurance, you're really winning nothing, because what is the goal of reassurance? Is to alleviate the anxiety of this thought. But if you think about it, you'll alleviate it for what? An hour, 2 hours, maybe a few days, right? And then another thought is going to come in and it's going to attack you all over again. So what's the point, really? It's just saying, I don't care if I have this thought or that thought. It's still going to be anxiety, so I'm just going to live parallel to it. I'm not going to react to it. And then you will see, as soon as you drop that reaction, that energy that you're constantly feeding towards this thought, it will start to lose power, and you will start to see through it like, oh, this is silly. But, like I said, right, in the previous question, people fall off the wagon of recovery all the time, It's just, if you fell for a few days, it's fine. But it's, if it's longer than that, you have to really pick yourself up and, get tough with yourself, more disciplined in, this is it. I'm focused, I'm recovering, I'm not looking back anymore, I'm just moving forward. So next question is, hi Ali, I have Puro. I feel anxiety during sleep. I wake up exhausted in the morning. What can I do to sleep well? I also have muscle twitching when I relax. All those symptoms, like when I had OCD myself, right? I had the muscle twitching as well. It's just a sign of extreme anxiety. Um, Also, it messes with your sleep, all this other stuff, right? I would say, and you're saying you feel exhausted, it's because you're doing reassurance, because you're analyzing and thinking about the thoughts over and over and over again. So you're kind of thinking about real life, but then also trying to solve OCD thoughts, which makes your brain work double time, and that's what's causing the problem. You have to be tough. No reassurance of any kind with Puro. It's usually self reassurance. So now, no analyzing the thought in any way, doing nothing. And then the more you do this, the more you will see that um, thoughts are starting to lift, and as they start to lift, all of these additional problems go away. So next question is, the person says, I continue to work on contamination issues. They have been somewhat better, however, still needs work. So it's just a process. It's just a process. As much as you can, refusing, refusing, refusing. No analyzing, no solving, no trying to figure things out, no physical compulsions. Doing the best you can every single day, every moment of every day. Um, Also, just another side note I wanted to mention today in the show is that if you are in situations that bring you stress in real life, it's important to kind of pre-warn yourself. Okay, today might be a stressful day. I'm not gonna let it bleed into OCD. So it's kind of preparing yourself. Okay, today, if I get an OCD thought, I'll first deal with my real life, then I'll deal with the OCD stuff. So you have a game plan, because when you have a game plan, it makes OCD less powerful and makes you feel more in control, which helps to react the right way. The person says, I'm not going to eat bad food for comfort today. Yeah, eating any kind of food to kind of feel better in the moment about OCD thoughts is not going to work. But recovery works, right? But yeah, we've all been there. Next question is, I would like to know what's the difference between suppressing a thought and dismissing, not dwelling on a thought. I've been dismissing a lot of the thoughts lately and moving on, but I feel at the same time I might be suppressing it. I know that suppressing a thought only makes the OCD worse, so can you please clear up the difference? Um, it's basically, you're just not reacting, and I think it's just a different way of saying it. What I want to warn you about is, a lot of the times, the OCD recovery itself can become an obsession. So if you're kind of splitting hairs between this wording and that wording, it kind of starts to sound a little bit like it. I'm not sure if that's the case with you, but you kind of have to examine if you're going too far into it. If you're ignoring the thought, if you're living parallel to the thought, if you feel like you are generally getting better, week to week, you're generally feeling better, then you're doing the right thing and you just need to keep going. If you feel like you're getting worse, then you need to probably seek less self-reassurance, because that's what almost all the time when I see people get worse, it's because of self-reassurance is usually the number one thing. Because you can only ask another person so many times, or check physically so many times, or do a compulsion so many times, but you're worried about the thoughts 24 hours a day. So that's usually where the culprit lies. So next question is, what is the difference between someone who is extreme warrior and someone with pure in terms of somebody who has OCD and someone who doesn't? So like somebody who's an extreme warrior but they don't have OCD, and then someone with just a pure type of OCD. It's a very fine line, right? I would say if the situation is kind of if the situation is not realistic, that's usually puro. If the situation is just everyday stuff, but the person is a warrior, so for example, worrying about, I don't know, finances, or I don't know, kids or family or whatever, is, I would say you can classify them as an extreme worrier. But if the person is worried about some scenario that's extremely unlikely, or that would not really, it would be impossible for it to happen pretty much, or the percentage of it happening it's extremely like 0.0, kind of low, right? Then that sounds like puro to me. Basically, yeah, anytime a person is extreme warrior, I would say, in my non-medical opinion, but with a lot of experience, I would say that if a person is an extreme warrior and have been most of their life, then they do have, a good chance of developing puro. So they have to be careful. But really, you can also classify puro itself as an extreme worry, right? And so it's kind of, again, like we're splitting hairs. So the next comment is, Ali, your techniques work very well. Definitely takes repetition, but I'm starting to feel a lift. Thank you. And that's the thing, is it's repetition. Just like you repeated to your mind before that the situation is important, now we have to repeat that the situation is not important. It's just going, going, going until you fully recover. So I want to talk to you about, I'm getting a lot of questions for religious OCD. Actually, religious OCD is very, very common, and it goes with all religions. It doesn't really matter. It's not really a specific religion thing. It can go across all religions. And if you're having thoughts that are, well, maybe I'm praying wrong. Well, I said something bad about God or to God, or I feel like I'm basically saying bad things during praying, and then also other compulsions that have to do with religious OCD. This is all part of religious OCD. You have to refuse giving it energy. You're not repraying. You're not explaining to God that, this is OCD and all of this. Like, you're not doing any compulsive actions. Believe me when I tell you, this has nothing to do with religion. This is just OCD grabbing onto a topic that's important to you, which happened to be religion. But it's not a religious issue. It's an OCD issue. So the more you react to it, though, as a real thing, it's the same thing as, the person who is having harm thoughts, is starting to think that, what if they're real? What if I'm a murderer? This kind of thing, right? It's the same thing here. What if I'm doing the wrong thing? What if I'm praying the wrong way? This is an OCD issue. It feels like it's a religious issue. It's really not. So not analyzing, not checking, not explaining to God, not repraying, not doing any of that, because you need this to lift. The more you are doing these things, these compulsions, the more you're falling into OCD. It's exposure and response prevention. The exposure is the thought whenever you get it during prayer or whatever, right? And then the preventing the response of fear. And when you prevent the response of fear, it doesn't mean that you're going against God. It just means that you're refusing the reaction. And by refusing the reaction, you are recovering. So it's saying, put it very clear for yourself. This has nothing to do with religion. This has nothing to do with faith. This is just your mind sees you react to a thought, and it's sending it back to you. It's sending it back to you. You're reacting. And that process goes over and over and over again. That's all that's happening. Just because it grabbed onto religion for you, it created an issue with this particular theme. It could have been any other theme just as well. So it's not seeing through what OCD is trying to sell you and just saying, you know what? No, thank you. I'm not dealing with this. This has nothing to do with my belief system. This has nothing to do with God. This is just pure OCD. And I am not reacting, just being very forceful about it. And you will see that it will start to lift, But separating OCD from your actual belief system, and if you feel like during prayer, like you prayed the wrong way or something like that, or a bad thought popped into your mind, during prayer, and that kind of a thing happened, or you faced an OCD thought that has to do with religion, and now you feel bad about it. This is all part of OCD. So to recover, we need to refuse the reaction, or you're going to be stuck in this loop of praying and repraying and rethinking and analyzing and apologizing and all of this for the rest of your life. So not doing this anymore, and that will make these thoughts go away. I hope these questions have helped you. If you have any questions, you can ask them and I'll answer on the next show. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe. Also visit youhaveocd.com for more information on the recovery program, the ebooks, and I have articles on there as well which could help you. So please check that out, and I will see you in the next show.